2024 was a great year for video games. From blockbuster titles to indie darlings, the year was stacked from top to bottom with quality releases all throughout. Now, I don't play every single game that comes out every year as I'm not made of money, nor do I have the time for all that. If there's any games you feel like got snubbed, don't sweat it, it's just for fun. And with that, here's my top 10 games of 2024. Starting up the list is Princess Peach Showtime. Princess Peach is cool, and her new game is lukewarm at best, I'm afraid. The game uses a Kirby-like formula with the Princess of the Mushroom Kingdom able to use different abilities by wearing different costumes. Thief Peach, Ice Dancer Peach, Cowgirl Peach, Ninja Peach, etc, etc. This sounds cool, and it is, however all these abilities are scripted to certain stages. I guess this is good in one way in that each stage uses the ability to perfection rather than mismatching them, but it makes the game somewhat linear. It also makes you want to avoid some stages as you know beforehand what ability you're forced into using. I love the game's theme, taking place in a multi-leveled auditorium with stage shows running all the time, but the game as a whole is just okay, if that, which sucks because I really wanted to like this one. Next up, it's the remake of Persona 3, refreshed and reloaded for a new generation of players, specifically those like myself who were introduced to the franchise with Persona 5. I'd never played the original game, so I was really looking forward to this one. Now I might catch some heat for this, but it didn't really do it for me like Persona 5 did. The story isn't that interesting, most of the characters are just okay, and scaling Tartarus at night is more of a chore than I'd like to admit. I think the game is fine, but for me personally it just isn't that great. It's not bad, it just doesn't live up to my expectations after all the praise I had heard the original game receive over the course of nearly 2 decades. Perhaps I'm handicapping Persona 3 by comparing it to 5, but that's my benchmark with the Persona franchise. It's a fine game, but that's really all the praise I can give it. Now I just played Buckshot Roulette for the first time this month, as I was peer pressured into paying a hard-earned $3 for it on a game night with my friends, and I'm glad I did. The game's more premise of either shooting other people or yourself with a shotgun is juxtapositionally hilarious, but the fact that this is a thinking man's game, one where a good memory, math skills, inventory management, and strategy pays big dividends blew my socks off. Get together with some friends and check this one out. Marvel Rivals is a game my friends and I had been looking forward to for a while before dropping in early December. This free-to-play hero shooter takes the formula of games such as Overwatch and applies it to the Marvel Universe, having the heroes of the pages duke it out while escorting payloads and defending swaths of the map. That's pretty much it, it's Overwatch but Marvel. If that sounds appealing to you, then check it out, especially since it'll only cost you hard drive space to play it. I like it, and it reminds me of when I was really into Overwatch when that game was still good. It's also fun to pick up an online game like this for the first time in a long time and genuinely have fun with it. From the makers of Persona comes a new IP in the form of Metaphor ReFantazio. Let me be upfront and say I haven't had a lot of time to play this game yet, but I like what I've seen so far. The king of Uchronia has been assassinated, and in the wake of the tragedy, the royal tournament begins, where literally anyone in the kingdom can ascend to the throne and become the new ruler of the kingdom. The game features staples of the Persona series, such as social links, summonable spirits, this time in the form of archetypes, battles revolving around exploiting weaknesses and pressing your turn further, etc, etc. However, it twists the familiar formulas in new ways, like archetypes being equipable by any party member rather than just having the protagonist be able to wield multiple personas, and the press turn system resembling something more along the lines of Octopath Traveler instead of Persona. The game is also set in a blood-soaked dark fantasy world that reminds me a lot of Kentaro Miura's manga series Berserk. Some of the bosses even look like something that could come straight out of the Eclipse. However, the stylish menus and snappy battle system firmly plants this as an extension of Persona. If you're a fan of that franchise, then this is definitely worth your time. Now that we're halfway through the list, I'd like to talk about a couple of honorable mentions. These are games that I do like, but because they're re-released compilations, I don't feel like I can put them on the core list of games for 2024. Explaining the origin of Marvel vs. Capcom helped me get a bit of a following, so of course I have to put the MVC collection here. I suck at these games, but it's great to own them nonetheless, and the museum collections for each game has some stunning artwork. Castlevania Dominus Collection was more than a welcome surprise. I'm a huge fan of the IP, and this collection of Nintendo DS games being ported to modern consoles is so awesome. They nailed it with screen layout, fitting both the upper and lower screens of the original DS onto a single display. Portrait of Ruin is one of my favorite games in the series, so being able to play it again without bending over backwards is amazing. WWE 2K24 is the first wrestling game I've gotten near release since I was a kid. I played 2K22 and 23, but it was after they were both on sale and had been on the market for a while. Since the disaster that was 2K20, 2K and Visual Concepts have been trying their best to revive the franchise, and I feel like 2K24 is the completion of that revival. The game is fun to pick up and play, and even though I think playing through the showcase mode is a chore, I really appreciate the inclusion of so many classic WrestleMania arenas and classic wrestlers. This was also the first time I sat down and learned how to use the arena creation tool, and I actually had a lot of fun with it. Recreating WCW with updated graphics as an all-women's promotion in Universe mode that I had so much fun playing. This game was a blast. Another game I've talked about previously on this channel, I'm glad to say that College Football 25 was an easy touchdown scorer. I don't think it totally lived up to the hype. There's a lot of improvement that can be made for future entries. But that didn't stop me from dumping hundreds of hours into the Dynasty mode, working my way from school to school as a coaching hired gun to win awards and championships along the way. The game isn't as polished as NCAA Football 14, but it brought back custom conferences from that game, along with making the recruiting more fun and in-depth. If you're tired of the yearly Madden releases, this is a breath of fresh air, and proves that EA actually can make a decent football game if they try. Vanillaware, bless. One of my favorite developers dropped another masterpiece with the hybrid strategy game Unicorn Overlord. The art style doesn't quite emulate Vanillaware's classic visuals, but the game is still a wonder to behold with amazing character models and backdrops. The game kind of plays like the old Ogre Battle series, but is far more forgiving and is less daunting for new players. Like Ogre Battle, units fight each other automatically, with each soldier's speed and skill stacking up to attack, buff, or debuff. Tinkering with the unit's makeup can vastly change how well it can fight and survive, and even how they can move across the battlefield. The gameplay is fun, but it's definitely not perfect, as the unit and class system can be kinda weird, but it works. The gameplay is fun, the story is interesting, and the cast of characters you meet along your journey to reclaim the crown of Cornea is extremely lovable. It's also an easy platinum for you trophy hunters out there, so check this one out. Now this was another pleasant surprise. For years I've wanted to play a Legend of Zelda game where you actually play as Zelda.
Not counting these piles of garbage.
And we finally got that this year with Echoes of Wisdom. It's definitely not a traditional Zelda game in many ways, but it's refreshing because of it. After two huge games in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it was nice to get back to basics and have actual dungeons. Which, by the way, the dungeon designs in this game are amazing, with the Pharaoh Temple possibly being my favorite. The gameplay is very quirky with the Echo system, as the whole game is more about figuring out how to best utilize your inventory of echoes rather than fight off monsters. Only being able to defend yourself for a few seconds with the sword does sound lame, but it all works somehow, especially when it comes to the boss battles. This might sound kind of strange, but this game actually reminds me a lot of Metal Gear Solid 2, which despite not playing as Solid Snake, the game is very much a love letter to the character. Echoes of Wisdom treats Link the same way. If you've played both games, you'll know what I mean. And now at number 1. Holy shit. As someone who is a big fan of FF7 Remake, this game took everything great about that game and cranked it up to 11. Outside of a couple complaints, like there being too many side activities in the overworld and the amount of minigames being as overboard as the original 1997 version, I felt like this was a damn near perfect game. The gameplay is fast-paced and fun, the story is compelling as hell, and graphically it's one of the best looking games I've ever played. I do think it's a little long in the tooth, as my initial playthrough, where I did everything except a series of optional bosses, took over 100 hours. But when I was getting near the end of the game, I was dreading it. I didn't want the story to end. That to me is a sign of a great game, where you never want to see that final screen. After finally finishing it, I was stunned to the point I just stopped playing games for a while. It was like I needed time to recover. This wasn't just a game, this was an experience, and I'm going to be chasing that dragon for a long time. And for that, I have to give Final Fantasy VII Rebirth my 2024 Game of the Year. So that's it for me. What were your favorite games this year? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, thank you for watching. I'm RedCometXIII, and I'll see you next time.
The fans really seem to enjoy that. You made it look easy.